So once again, welcome everybody. We certainly appreciate your participation in tonight's event on the reopening of schools, in particular for our Seven Valleys New Tech Academy. Again, it's a beautiful night out there, so we appreciate the time that you're taking to join us through this webinar, and hopefully when you're done, you'll get outside and enjoy some of the weather, although I think it's still nice out. I haven't been out in a bit. But again, thank you for joining us. My name is Eric Comtois. I am the Director of our Career and Technical Education Programs and Innovative Ed Programs here at OCM BOCES, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Amy Drumluck. I'm the principal here at Seven Valleys New Tech. Thank you for being here with us.
So as we look to return to school in the coming weeks, this session really is intended to provide you with up-to-date information on our reopening plans. So we'll go through a lot of information over the next little while, and hopefully you can come away knowing a little bit more, and if you have more questions, we're available to answer those. Click to the next slide.
There we go.
And again, this is
my arrow button. There we go.
It's okay. So again, we've done our introduction, so we'll keep moving here. A little bit about Zoom webinar in case you are not familiar with the different features. Again, we're starting at 6:30. We're going to do our best to respect the end time of 7:30 p.m. As questions come up, we're going to ask you to use the Q&A feature that is at the bottom of your screen. So if you do have questions or comments related to something we present tonight, please use that Q&A, and at the end, we're going to take some time to answer your questions. You are not able to see the other participants or hear them, and you yourself are not able to speak. But if you cannot hear us or see us at any time, just put that in the Q&A, and we'll look to fix that as soon as we can. So our agenda for this evening, we're going to take a minute to review the OCM BOCES reentry plan, reopening plan. We'll talk about our health and safety procedures. We'll talk about classroom arrangements and procedures, what your student can expect. So maybe what's different than in the past here at Seven Valleys, what you can do to help your child prepare for reopening. So what ways can you support as we prepare to come back into the school setting? We'll talk about instructional practices, including access to online resources and what in-person or remote learning might look like. And then again, we'll have that opportunity for a question and answer session towards the end. So you may have seen this through recent communication through OCM BOCES and through our Seven Valleys New Tech Academy is our reopening plan. So our reopening plans, all schools had to submit them to New York State. So if you access ocmboces.org/reopening 2020, you'll find this site, and you'll notice that there are information about our parent webinars, which are taking place this week. We'll talk about testing and tracing. All that information's on there, remote learning, an actual copy of our reopening plan, which is 50 some odd pages long. So obviously we will not cover every aspect of reopening tonight, but if there's more detail that you would like in a certain area, I encourage you to look at that document. We'll talk about different classrooms and our reopening signage. Some examples are listed there. So really it's a great resource, and our entire ocmboces.org website is a great resource for more information, and especially when it comes to reopening plans. So our reopening plan includes many different considerations, including communication and community engagement, which we're engaged in tonight. Health and safety obviously is at the forefront of decision-making about reopening our schools. And I won't list all of these different considerations, but these are all the items that needed to be in our reopening plan, right down to social emotional well-being, attendance, teaching and learning, and special education. So again, all of these are documented in our reopening plan. If we don't cover them in detail tonight, I encourage you to look at that document. Please note at the bottom, we are very, very excited through all of our hard work over the summer and assessing our space and assessing our student enrollment, that we're able to offer all OCM BOCES student programs in person 5 days per week. And that is, we're able to do that in compliance with the CDC and Department of Health guidelines. We are excited about that. We miss our students. We miss having them in the building. It's been very quiet around here. So we're excited at the opportunity to have them come back into school, but also to do so safely. In addition to the 5-day in-person instruction that we are offering, we're also offering an all-remote instruction option. Later on in our presentation, we'll talk more about what in-person instruction will look like, how that might be different, and then also what our all-remote instruction opportunities would look like for students. So the first item that we're going to be going through is our health and safety procedures. Obviously, when we talk about reopening of schools, health and safety is a large consideration. When we do have students walk through the door, we need to know that they are safe and that our staff are safe as well. So the first item we'll go over in terms of health and safety are our protocols for cleaning. So in a normal routine school day prior to COVID, there was the normal disinfecting of our schools, and that will continue. But in addition to that normal routine cleaning, we're also going to be cleaning those high touch areas. So the doorknobs, desk surfaces, tables, those will be cleaned multiple times throughout the day. All cleaning products that are being used or will be used are approved by the CDC and the EPA for COVID-19. We have purchased as an organization several Clorox 360 sprayers, so that it kind of releases a fog and disinfects entire areas. So that will be used for disinfecting, and bathrooms will be cleaned at least 3 times per day. Daily temperature screenings will be administered to all students upon arrival. So this was a decision that we made as an organization. For all students that attend any of our student services programs, they will be temperature screened upon arrival to school. Parents and guardians are responsible for evaluating their child's health each day before sending them to school. And that's consistent with our component school district procedures. So you'll be hearing more, if you haven't already, from your home school district about their procedures for monitoring and evaluating your child's health. And that might be through an app or a questionnaire. So any of our procedures, including our temperature screenings, will be in addition to the measures that your home schools are taking. Additionally, information materials regarding COVID-19 symptoms are being developed. So many of these have been developed and are listed on our website. But as they are developed and are designed to help better educate you and your child, those will be sent home. Those links will be sent home. Those resources will be sent home for you to access. And health and safety videos will be made available as well, of course, with the idea of helping to educate on health and safety so that we can all remain safe in the school setting. Continuing on, students or staff members exhibiting symptoms, and if you don't know what those symptoms are, we have those listed in our reopening plan, and those are aligned with the CDC and health department guidance. So any staff member or student who is exhibiting a symptom during the day will be sent to the school health office for assessment by the school nurse. Subsequently, any student or staff member with a temperature of 100 degrees or greater, it's decided that they should not be in school. In addition to this, those screening questionnaires that we referenced before will be used to determine if an individual has experienced symptoms in the recent past, has been exposed to or tested positive for COVID-19, or has traveled to a location on the travel advisory list. So those questionnaires are not only for students, but any visitors who will be coming to the school, which we will be limiting, and we'll talk more about that as well later. So parents of students exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms will be contacted to pick up their child and instructed to contact their healthcare provider. So this is very important to note that we have your accurate contact information on file. And I know Mrs. Connors, Mrs. Drumlick, we've been making calls home in the past few weeks. And one of the questions that we're asking is, do we have the most up-to-date contact information? Because if we were to have to reach you during a school day and your child was exhibiting symptoms and that you needed to come pick them up, we need to make sure that we have that accurate contact information. And it's essential that your child is picked up immediately for their own safety and the safety of others. So when you think about, I think as a parent, sometimes at the end of the summer, you get that form home and is this accurate? And you kind of just read through it quickly and you sign off on it. It's really important that you take the extra time to look, make sure it's accurate. And if you need to make any updates to that form, please do that. And also do that through your home district as well. So we're all aligned and we all have the information we need to keep you and your family safe. So we're going to move on to testing and contact tracing. So we'll discuss the different scenarios that could potentially happen. So a child who exhibits those COVID-19 symptoms must be seen by a healthcare provider who will determine if a COVID-19 test is necessary. So we're really leaning on healthcare providers to guide us in the steps, whether it's testing or what happens when you test positive or negative. So if a COVID-19 test is deemed not necessary by the healthcare provider, the following must happen in order for them to return to school. The student must have no fever without the use of fever-reducing medicine, and the student must have felt well for 24 hours. And finally, the students will need, that student would need a doctor's note stating that the student is cleared to return to school. So that is for a case where the medical provider says that a test is not necessary. We still need to follow these protocols. In the case of a student who tests positive for COVID-19, the following is the case. They must stay home for at least 10 days since the first symptoms were noticed. It's been at least 3 days since the student had a fever without the fever-reducing medicine again. And it's been at least 3 days since the student's symptoms improved, including cough and shortness of breath. And there's an order of release from the health department. It's important to note that in the event of a positive case, we would work very, very closely with the Department of Health to make decisions around, potentially decisions around the school and a potential closure. So we do not make those decisions in isolation. This chart kind of shows the path for contact tracing in Cortland County. So I'll give you a moment to read that over. But basically, if there is a confirmed positive case of a student in our program, we are going to work, as I said, directly with the Department of Health on contact tracing. So that's why it's important for us to really maintain our accurate records in terms of attendance and school schedules, so that we could provide accurate information as it's needed. So the contact tracer, based on interviews, identifies who needs to be issued a 14-day quarantine. This is a little bit different than maybe I had heard in the past, that even a person who has been issued that 14-day quarantine, if they test negative, the person will need to complete the 14-day quarantine as originally stated. We'll talk now a little bit about the supplies that we have available in the school for, for our custodial staff and for our teachers. So first, talking about face covering or masks. Approved masks must cover the nose and mouth, and the school is required to have masks on hand for any staff members or students who do not have them. So we will have those on hand to start the school year. We're going to talk a little bit more in the upcoming slides about expectations for wearing masks while in the school building. Cleaning and sanitizing supplies, including disinfecting wipes and sprays, will be present in all of our classroom spaces. So any instructional space or an area where students will be making contact with furniture, all of those spaces will have the necessary cleaning supplies available. Additionally, hand sanitizers will be available in all of our instructional spaces, and students will be encouraged to use those hand sanitizers when they're not able to wash their hands. And of course, at the beginning of the year, our emphasis will be really educating students on the why this is important, why social distancing is vital, and correct hand washing and respiratory hygiene. Finally, OCM BOCES has begun to create educational materials, and we have been throughout, and we'll make those available to you to promote health and safety in schools. This includes different signage that we have had delivered, and on our next slide here, you'll see some examples of some of the signs that we have begun to put up around our school. So here you can see the first sign: please register and complete your screening with reception. So anyone who enters our building will go directly to register at our reception as normal, but they will also be asked to complete a COVID screening. We'll be educating students on the way to properly store and discard their PPE. Of course, we'll be educating students on the importance of washing hands as frequently as possible and the expectations for social distancing 6 feet apart. We'll be educating students on the importance of limiting the spread of germs and how we can do that in all of our school settings. And of course, the expectation that students are wearing a mask at all times when moving throughout the building. Our instructional spaces, we spent a lot of time. I give a lot of credit to those who have been in the building, Mrs. Drumlick, Mrs. Connors, Mrs. Hendricks, and some of our other staff who have really been in looking at our spaces and identifying how we can best meet our student needs, yet meet our the social distancing guidelines. So students will have individual workspaces in all of our instructional spaces. So this includes distancing of 6 feet. So you can see here in this picture, this room has been set up taking social distancing into account. Students and staff must wear a face covering at all times in all school settings. This is very, very important, and it's something that we'd appreciate you as we prepare for reentry to in-person instruction, that you kind of go over this and support our efforts prior to the school year starting. There will be an opportunity for mask breaks to be provided, for example, when students are eating and drinking, but these mask breaks will be limited and only as appropriate when social distancing can be maintained. So those mask breaks would be directed by an adult. So whether that's a teacher or administrator, they will designate those mask break times. Hallways are being reconfigured. Ms. Drumlick was just out there now, and we were working at it and looking at the best way to configure our hallways. So we're looking at one-way direction as possible, and so students would be. We're lucky in the sense that it's kind of a big square here and a big loop, so we can have that. We can set up direction around our building in a one-way fashion. When discussing school sanitization, the custodial staff, as we mentioned earlier, will disinfect and sanitize each area daily using those approved cleaners. Hand sanitizer will be available and hand washing will be encouraged. Staff will also have access to disinfecting supplies to use between classes. We're making every effort to have teachers move whenever possible, so students are doing less of the transition. But when you're thinking about creating a high school schedule, that can be challenging at times. So there will be times when students have to move classes, but we will have disinfecting supplies available to use between. Drinking fountains have been covered. So the traditional drinking fountain that you put your head down and take a drink out of, those will be covered. But bottle filling stations are still open, meaning students can bring a water bottle that is labeled with their name. Obviously, they would not be sharing, and they would be able to fill their water bottles at those stations. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Mrs. Drumlick to continue our presentation, but I just want to put a little plug in here. If you have any questions or comments that you would like answered, we will have some dedicated time towards the end of the presentation to answer those. We're asking that you please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You click on that, and then you will be able to submit a question. Again, those questions go to us. If we are not able to answer any of your questions, we will save these and we will reach out to you individually. But I will turn it over to Ms. Drumlick now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comtois. So as we move on to the next portion of the presentation, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the information on how to prepare your child for returning to school, what they can expect within the classroom and building arrangements, as well as instructional practices for what's different and what to expect for both in-person and for remote instruction. So in terms of preparing your child, I think the best thing to really accentuate here is to be positive and reassuring. As we know, as collaborative partners, we work with our families, we work with our parents and our community partners in our districts. So we really want to make sure that we embrace this change and that we encourage everybody to recognize there are going to be new rules put in place and that they are there for the safety and well-being of all students and staff. And we'd also appreciate the opportunity for you to discuss with your child hand washing, hygiene, reinforcing the use of hand washing and hand sanitizers throughout the day as well. As you can see, we have these signs, as Mr. Comtois mentioned, that are up around the building, so we'll be reminding students of that throughout the day as well. Again, just reinforcing the appropriate use of wearing a face covering, so mask that would be covering the mouth and the nose. With an increased length of time for wearing the masks. Sometimes when we're out and about, we might be wearing them as we go in or out of a store, but this would be for the extended length of time within the school day, within a regular period of classes. We will be allowing mask breaks, as Mr. Comtois mentioned, at the discretion of the teacher. So that might be throughout the day. The teacher would be able to say a designated amount of time to take the mask off. as well as for eating, drinking, things like that. Typically throughout the school day here at Seven Valleys, the students had been allowed to kind of take a break from their classroom and take brief walks in the hallway. However, as we are monitoring appropriate transitions throughout the hallway and monitoring the building use and space, we are going to be limiting the transitions between classes and limiting any additional movement within the hallways throughout the class time and throughout the class day. So as Mr. Comtois mentioned, whenever possible, we are going to have classes try to resume one location and reducing the movement throughout the building and having teachers move from one location to another. So we've worked really hard to set up the building in a way that will maintain social distancing across all settings. As Mr. Comtois just mentioned, I was out labeling the hallway to get them ready for one-way traffic, indicating which way they should be moving safely throughout the building. We have also reconfigured some of our spaces. As you can see in this photo, it demonstrates two things. The water fountains have been covered to allow for just the bottle filling stations to be used, but we've also taken what was a traditional breakout space and we've turned it into more of like a lobby or lounge setting to maximize the 6 feet social distancing within the hallways as well. So those breakout spaces will be limited to no more than 3 students. We'll continue to share provided resources and discuss these things as educational opportunities once our students return to school. Our classrooms have been arranged in a way that are social distancing. So as you can see in this picture here, we have moved tables so that they are 1 student per table at a distance of 6 feet apart, all facing the same direction and facing forward. We've maximized the most amount of space that we can by removing additional furniture that's unnecessary within the classrooms, within the buildings, within common areas. And we have no more than 18 students per classroom, which still allows for the 6 feet of social distancing. We will be providing hand sanitizer and hand sanitizing stations. We will not be sharing supplies, so each student will be receiving their own individual MacBook. It will be an assigned MacBook from the school, and they will be receiving that to be able to use. And whenever possible, we will be providing all information digitally to reduce paper flow and distribution of supplies within the class. We are also going to be opening our windows whenever possible to provide additional ventilation, and hopefully the weather will continue to cooperate in that front so we can get some fresh air into the classrooms. So in terms of just what students can expect for instructional practices and what looks different and what's the same, I'm going to talk a little bit about some like a typical school day. So what's different right now? Breakfast and lunch are going to be provided at school as it has been. However, instead of eating in the cafeteria or in common areas or lounges or breakout spaces, they are going to be brought to designated classrooms. So our breakfast time and our lunch time will be in designated areas. We are not going to be able to provide access to the stove, the microwave, or the refrigerator. So this is a bit of a change for our Seven Valleys students in the past who may have been bringing in food items and cooking lunch and participating in that way. What we are asking is if a student is bringing lunch from home, just to make sure that it's prepared, nothing that needs to be heated, and could be kept on an ice pack throughout the day since the refrigerator will not be in use. Our arrival and dismissal times are going to be staggered so that we can practice social distancing and allow for temperature screenings. When students arrive to the building, they will be escorted, safely to a location where they'll be able to have their breakfast and enjoy a homeroom time with supervision and with peers. And again, whenever possible, we're going to be limiting transitions within the building, and visitors to the building will be limited as well. Within our student cohort model, we are going to try to maximize a schedule where students will be staying in one location and teachers will be switching. Sometimes that is tricky with a high school schedule, but we'll be doing the best that we can at providing that. And all of our PE classes, when weather appropriate, will be conducted outside. And when in the gymnasium, students will be 12 feet apart as per the guidelines recommended by the state. So as far as what in-person learning will look like, students and staff are going to be adhering to the social distancing practices within the classroom and the common areas. We are going to be educating students on appropriate use of instructional technology and using it daily in the classroom so that we can practice in the event of a closure. They will know how to access things like Echo as well as other digital platforms. forms. We will also be offering the opportunity for parents to gain information about how they can access ECHO. There are already instructional videos for families that are created that we can share with you so you know how to help your student for remote or in-person learning. Our instructional objectives for in-person learning are going to mirror those for remote instruction so that we have equity of learning across all settings. And we will still adhere to our project-based learning model and co-taught classes as our #1 priority. We can utilize our National New Tech Network organization to provide some PBL strategies to our school, and we will be able to provide collaboration and opportunities for students to continue to work together both in person and remotely. So for remote instruction, we are going to be expecting the substantial interaction daily between teachers and students, and there will be designated times where teachers can check in for one-on-one or small group interaction with our remote students. All assignments will continue to be administered within ECHO. They will be given there, they will be submitted for grading, and feedback will also be available within that same platform. Attendance will be taken daily regardless of in-person or remote instruction as per the New York State Department of Education policy. We will continue to utilize Google Meet and Zoom so that we can provide video lessons and conferencing for students and for teachers, both remote and in-person as well. And students who are not in attendance, either in person or remote, will be contacted by the school so that we can make sure that they are doing well. We can provide any necessary support that they may need. And if a student does choose to do remote learning, they must stay remote until their home district timeline allows for the return. Our current remote instructional plans continue to be developed, and we will be communicating that as we get closer to the beginning of the school year. If at any time a student who is in person decides that they would prefer to be remote, that is also an option, but again, they do need to adhere to their home district timeline for return safely to school. Okay. So I'll turn it back over to address any of the question and answer that we may have had within our feature.
Sure, just a few notes of emphasis from what you said. The attendance, right? So for those students who do choose remote, attendance will be taken daily. So that's really important to note that that's guidance from New York State Education Department. So there will be certain expectations for remote instruction on both ends, from our end as teachers and expectations for students as well. Another piece about technology and connectivity, we are pleased that we can offer the one-to-one technology, and many of our returning students have that experience with ECHO. So that will do them well, whether in person or remote. They have the ability to submit and navigate their assignments through ECHO. So that's one thing that works in our favor at a new tech school. So I'm just going to put in a plug here. If you have any, I know we definitely covered a lot of content in a relatively short amount of time. So if you have any questions or you need any clarification, I'm asking you to put those in the Q&A at the bottom, and we're just going to go through. So we do have a few questions here, excuse me, that I will address. So the first questions: how will you address students who aren't wearing a mask or wearing a mask appropriately? That's really a great question. I know that's a consideration we've had as administrators, as teachers, as staff members. What are the expectations around wearing a mask? And our expectation is that while you are in the school building or on school property or on the bus, that you will be wearing a mask at all times. Of course, we talked about those prescribed mask breaks, but again, that would be at the direction of an adult and on a very limited basis. So if a student is not following through with that, our approach is really from the beginning of the year, starting right now, and we can use your support, is to educate students on the importance of wearing a mask and the impacts that wearing a mask can have on our school community and the larger community. So if a student is not following that guidance, then we're really going to look to educate them on the importance of it and take steps to make sure that they are wearing a mask, because it is an expectation to wear a mask at any time when you're in school. Okay, moving on here. When is the first day of instruction for students? That's a great question because some of our component districts have been shuffling around the dates. So our school calendar is available on ocmboces.org. We are going to look to make a change to that calendar, but that has not yet been approved by the Board of Education, but I will say that's going for approval tomorrow evening. So instead of September 8th, the first day of instruction will be September 9th. And that is when we are open for students for in-person instruction and remote instruction. That may vary from district to district. Typically, districts would transport on the first day that they are open for school. So you should be getting more information, and there are a few questions about transportation. So I can kind of just hit that now. If you have not heard yet, districts are very busy. They've been tasked with a very difficult challenge of developing plans for school busing, taking into account social distancing on the buses. So they're hard at work, and we're in contact with our district partners often. So we will continue to be in contact with them, but they will be reaching out to you. But they have assured us that they will be transporting students 5 days per week to our Seven Valleys campus. So again, if you need answers and you'd like us to help facilitate that, we certainly can. Let's see here. I'm sorry if I missed this, but is remote going to follow the same day as in person? So there will be expectations that if you choose remote instruction, that you will follow a schedule, and we're still in the process of developing what that schedule would be, but there'd be expectation that there will be daily connection with the teacher to provide instruction. So that would again be 5 days and following the school schedule. There were a few questions about filtration and let's see, the type of ventilation system that Seven Valleys have. So have you made a decision about using an upgraded version of the air filtration system? I will admit I am not an HVAC expert by any means, but we do have members of our organization that are, and I have been assured that all of our air filters in all of our buildings meet the standards for filtration. So they currently do. If you would like more information on exactly what filter, I know, I mean, I've heard the terms as well, the MERV 13 and different filter types. I would not speak on that necessarily knowledgeably. So if you are interested in that, reach out to the school and we can get you that information for sure. Another question that came in, are you having teachers or facilitators change classes instead of having the students move around from class to class? When possible, yes, we are looking to do that. So we're looking to limit the number of times students are transitioning, and when possible, having them transition in a staggered way so that all students are in the hallway at the same time. So we're looking at different options for that. We're still in the planning processes, but yes, as available, teachers will be doing the moving to different classes rather than students. Next question, when will we get our schedules? Great question. As you know, the schedules are, throughout the summer, this is a busy time as we look to adapt those schedules and create them for the upcoming school year. This year, we're tasked with, having two options of in-person and remote, so that makes things a little bit tricky. I will just say that it's really important that we get an answer for what type of instruction you are choosing. And letters have been sent home, and we're just asking that those decisions are made by next week, by August 26th. And that allows us to really fully develop and finalize those schedules. So while schedules are not necessarily complete and finalized, I do know Mrs. Drumlick, Mrs. Henricks have been hard at work. They've been poring over many, many different versions of a schedule. So we will get those to you and to the students as soon as we can, but just know that they are being worked on with an emphasis on creating the best possible learning opportunities for students. So we filter through, I'm not seeing any other new questions. We'll give you a moment to process and think, and then if you have more questions, feel free to type them right in. Again, I will say that if you have questions that are specific to your child, we'd be happy to answer those if you wanted to call the school at any point leading up to the school year. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions at this point. So we'll go on to the last slide, and if there are any last minute questions, go ahead, type them in, grab our attention. Really just putting a plug in here for you to contact the school. Number one, if you have any questions at all, we are definitely open to your feedback, to your concerns, or to answer any questions that still might be lingering. If you have the opportunity, I encourage you to look at our reopening plan. It's important to note that the reopening plan was, submitted at the end of last month, the beginning of August, and as we move from the planning to the implementation stage, things change, things adjust. So there have been updates made to that reopening plan, and there will continue to be based on guidance from New York State or the health department. So also, in addition, if you have any questions, if you need to update your contact information, I cannot stress this enough that we need you to have the most up-to-date information on file with us and with your school district. So we'll be asking you that through phone calls if we do get a hold of you. And finally, if you've yet to confirm in-person or remote instruction, please notify us by August 26th. Okay. See a few more that might have come in here, so I'm just going to look through. Unfortunately, on our Q&A, it doesn't filter them in order, so they sometimes just drop questions in anywhere along the line. So I'm just going to look quickly. If you want to ride a bike to school, would you still be able to lock it up? We're willing to accommodate different ways to get students to school and have them in person, so we can work with you individually about how we could do that. Of course, we would need permission from you and our home school districts in order to make a change to transportation. But if you want to reach out to us directly, we can do that. Another question here. Educational techniques will be used for those who do not adhere to the mask policy. I'm guessing the same will be done for those who fail to social distance. That is correct. What specifically will be done for repeat offenders? So at the point, if we will work to educate, we will work to identify the why and help students better understand the why of social distancing and mask wearing. If we have a repeat offender, that's where we're going to, we would be contacting home, we'd be contacting our school district partners, and we'd be making decisions about students in terms of what our next steps are in terms of helping them understand the importance and wear a mask and social distance. And of course, that will be done on an individual basis, and you would be part of that conversation because obviously, first and foremost, we're concerned with the health and safety of our students and our staff. And we need to set those expectations and follow through with them. Okay, I think that is the extent of our questions. So I would just like to say I appreciate your participation. This is a very important part of the process. If you have any comments or any concerns, again, please feel free to reach out to us, and we definitely appreciate you. And I will just say, once again, I miss seeing students on a daily basis, so we're really looking forward to seeing you soon. Mrs. Drumlick, do you have anything else to add?
I would just echo the same thing. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Ms. Henricks, Ms. Connors, and myself are here. So feel free to send an email or make a phone call. We're happy to help in any way that we can. And as we continue to develop plans and schedules, we'll definitely be in touch with that as we get closer to the beginning of the school year. Thank you for your time. I do miss seeing all of our students, so hopefully we will be seeing them in person very soon. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.